Old Testament and see if it's meaningful to us even today. First, we need to learn who Lot's uncle was and how important he was, and his name is Abraham. I'll start with Genesis 17, 3 through 5. Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you will be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I will make you the father of a multitude of nations." Genesis 18, 16 through 21. Then the men rose up from there, and they looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham was walking with them to send them off. And the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed? For I have chosen him so that he may commend his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him." And the Lord said, "The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to their outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know." Well, Abraham knew that this was serious, and he questioned, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" We know the Lord told him, "I won't, if you can find 50 righteous people." Well, Abraham couldn't find 50. So God even told him, "Can you find 45? No. I'm looking around the room. We probably have 30 to 40. He couldn't even find a righteous person. Clear down to 10. He still did not find 10 righteous people. At 10, he finished talking to Abraham, and the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his place. So I want us to look at this situation and see what it has to do with Lot and his wife. And I want you to remember through this that Lot is Abraham's nephew. I'm going to do something a little different this morning. I have a book called The Women of the Bible, and I'm going to share the portion about Lot's wife and some of the other research that I did to share with you this morning. I think it would be very interesting to you. Lot's wife was a prosperous woman who may have attached herself to the good life, but though there is no indication she participated in the sins of Sodom, she tolerated them. And it was her heart that became divided as a result. Her tragedy was that her heart's choice led to judgment rather than mercy, and that she ultimately refused God's attempt to save her. I was looking up to see what her actual name was, and in the scriptures it says Lot's wife is not spoken of as a personal name like we have today. In the Jewish tradition, she is referred to as Ado or Edith. But in the scriptures, she's only known as Lot's wife. The daughters of Lot are not given personal names in the scriptures either. They are just known as Lot's daughters. Lot's wife had only hours to live, but she did not even expect what was going to happen. She must have gone about her business of the day, tidying in the house and cooking and visiting with the neighbors, and unaware of the tragedy that was going to overtake her. Years earlier, she had married Abraham's nephew, and the two had gained a fortune in land and livestock. Eventually, they settled in Sodom, uncomfortably comfortable, in a city that was so wicked that heaven itself dispatched angels to investigate the allegations against it. Lot, it so happened, was at the city gate at the very moment the angels arrived. Greeting the strangers, he quickly asked them to spend the night in his home. He was anxious if they did not spend in the night in his home, that something would happen to him in the dark, to the angels. Lot's wife must have welcomed the strangers warmly, with hospitality, because that was a sacred trust in the ancient world. But then, just before bedtime, she heard voices. At first, they were muffled words, and they were echoing laughter. And finally, the words got ugly, and the clamor was like a noose of men tightening around the rooms. Rough voices shouted at her husband to open the door and surrender those guests to us for our pleasure. "No, my friend, don't do this wicked thing," Lot screamed back at them. But the crowd was furious for its own way. Then he attempted an appalling bargain. He said, "Look, I have 2 daughters, and I will send them out, and you may have them. But don't do anything to these men that have come under the protection of my roof." But the men of Sodom would not be thwarted, and they rushed the door to force their way in. Suddenly, the angels reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and struck the men at the door blind. Then they turned to Lot, urging him, "Do you have anyone else living here? Son-in-laws, daughters, or anyone else? Is there anyone else in the city that belongs to you? Get them out, because we're going to destroy this place." But Lot's son-in-laws thought this was a joke, and they refused to leave. At dawn, the angel again urged Lot to hurry, lest he and his wife and daughters would perish with the rest of the city. Still, the family hesitated until the angels finally grabbed their hands and dragged them out, urging them, "Flee for your lives and don't look back, and do not stop anywhere in the valley. Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away." By the time Lot and his family reached the small city of Zoar, the sun had risen over the land, and everything in Sodom was engulfed in burning sulfur. Men, women, children, and livestock were all destroyed. It was a terrible judgment for a terrible sin. But the judgment was even worse than either Lot or his daughters realized. Safe at last, they must have turned to each other in relief at their escape, and then they turned again in shock, realizing one member of their family wasn't there. They would have searched and hoping against hope until they finally caught sight of the white salt pillar silhouetted against the sky, a lonely monument in the shape of a woman who had turned around toward Sodom. Remember, the angel said, "Don't look back." If you've ever seen a picture of ancient Pompeii, destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79, where human shapes are preserved to this day by the lava that stopped them dead in their tracks, you might imagine the disaster that overtook Lot's wife. Why did she turn, despite the angel's warning? Was her heart still attached to everything she left behind in the city? A life of comfort and ease? Or did she still have family trapped there? Or was she fascinated by the tragedy that was happening? Perhaps all those things combined were the glue that caused her feet to slow down and her head to turn. And then her body was overtaken by the punishment. It was too late. God had meant to save her, but by her own choice, and her very last choice, she cast her lot with judgment rather than with mercy. Jesus urges his followers to remember Lot's wife. It will be just like this on the day the Son of Man is revealed. On that day, no one who is on the roof of his house with his goods inside should go down to get them. Likewise, no one in the field should go back for anything. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever tries to keep his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will preserve it. These are sobering words recalling a sobering story, words that meant to lead us away from the compelling illusion of wickedness and safe into the arms of mercy. I did a little research on the word salt. We all know what salt is, but it's not much of a legacy in Lot's wife, for she is remembered by less and just about being turned to salt. But she was a wife, she was a mother, and she was a daughter, and possibly a sister. But and then what was happening to her was all behind her. All she did was turn around. The word salt is a very common chemical in our world. We use it probably every day. In Palestine, in fact, it possessed rich salt depositories which accounted for such places named the Salt Sea, otherwise known as the Dead Sea, the Valley of Salt, and the City of Salt. The Romans probably looked on Israel as a worthy conquest simply because of the salt that was available there. I found this interesting. This first part, we do this. The Hebrews used to salt their food, and that would season it. Otherwise, it was a tasteless food if it was eaten without salt. That says in Job. Hebrew women rubbed their newborn babies with salt, and they also would do salt baths for the newborn babies. Salt was a required supplement in the Old Testament for grain sacrifices. It says, season all your grain offerings with salt in Leviticus. The word salt is used several times in the New Testament. All of them are symbolic, and Jesus tells us to remember that as believers, we are the salt of the earth. Our attitudes and our actions can cleanse and season and purify our surroundings. When we respond graciously to someone who is ungracious, we season our world with salt. When we treat an irritable child with kindness, we season our home with salt. When we comfort the hurting, console the lonely, or encourage the discouraged, or calm the unsettled, we season the world with salt. As followers of Christ, you might be a salt shaker. We need to be full so that we can be busy sprinkling our world with the salt that flavors life. Earlier, God had promised Abraham he would spare the city of Sodom if he could only find 10 righteous people. But not even 10 were found. So God sent his angels to Sodom to rescue Lot and his family from the coming destruction. Hesitant to the last minute, the angels took Lot and his 2 daughters by the hand and led them out of the city. The question is, did God know Abraham was thinking of Lot when he begged for the city to be spared if they found 50 righteous, or 45? 30, 20, 10. Was God's mercy extended to Lot for the love of Lot or for the love of Abraham? We don't know, but we do know that God's mercy was available for Lot and his family, and his mercy is available to you as well, even in the worst of times. The most difficult situation, in the hardest of circumstances, he is there stretching out his hand to lead you to safety. When he left, Lot hesitated, and they did grasp his hand and take them, and they were told, don't look back. In a society of ours, it's rare to find someone who has not become attached to the comforts of this world. Can you test your own self and give up some of those comforts for just 1 week, such as television, newspapers, shopping malls? You know what your comforts are. Instead, carve out a time and a place in your home where you can talk to God and let him know what you're feeling and what you're grateful for. I wanted to share a few scriptures that meant a lot to me and the people that were speaking these. In closing, Jesus is talking to his disciples in this, and it's in Luke 17:26 through 30. And just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, and they were being given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. It was the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, they were building. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed. Matthew 24:44. For this reason, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not think he will. Yes, the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah and Noah and Lot's wife are in the Old Testament. And the scriptures I just read are Jesus speaking and warning us today. David also was speaking in Psalms, and I think we should concentrate on these words from David, and that's in Psalms 139, 1 through 4. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thoughts from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all. David was also speaking on Psalm 62, 5 through 8. My soul waits in silence for God only, for my hope is in him. He only is my rock and my salvation. My stronghold, I shall not be shaken. On God, my salvation is my glory rest. The rock of my strength, my refuge is in God. Trust in him at all times, O people, and pour out your heart before him, for God is a refuge for us. There are 150 Psalms in the Bible, and David is the author of 73 of them. He is the author of Psalm 62 that we just read. He has written this not just for him, but for us. A month or so ago, I received something on Facebook that started out with a scripture, and it was Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who are called according to his purpose. The writing that went with it, it said, God is making a way for us right now. Maybe the first half of 2025 was not the best for us, but God is not finished. He created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Imagine what he can do in the next 6 months. Our season can change in a moment. One season, David was a shepherd, and the next, he was a king. One season, Ruth was a worker in the field, and the next, she owned the field. We serve a God who turns things around for the good, but we must trust him. God is not finished with our story yet if we choose faith over fear. That's the conclusion of my message, and if you want to have the song. That's not me.